Okay, moving right along with a report from Iron Mountain. I wish this wouldn't be so glaring so that you can see this book much better. Very aggravating. Got the seal on the top there. Alright, here we go. We are now in section 7. Summary and conclusions. The nature of war. War is not, as is widely assumed, primarily an instrument of policy utilized by nations to extend or defend their expressed political values or their economic interests. On the contrary, it is itself the principal basis of organization on which all modern societies are constructed. The common proximate cause of war is the apparent interference of one nation with the aspirations of another. But at the root of all ostensible differences of national interests lie the dynamic requirements of the war system itself for periodic armed conflict. Readiness for war characterizes contemporary social systems more broadly than their economic and political structures which it subsumes. Economic analyses of the anticipated problems of transition to peace have not recognized the broad preeminence of war in the definition of social systems. The same is true with rare and only partial exceptions of model disarmament scenarios. For this reason, the value of the previous work is limited to the mechanical aspects of transition. Certain features of these models may perhaps be applicable to a real situation of conversion to peace. This will depend on their compatibility with a substantive rather than a procedural peace plan. Such a plan can be developed only from the premise of full understanding of the nature of the war system it proposes to abolish, which in turn presupposes detailed comprehension of the functions the war system performs for society. It will require the construction of a detailed and feasible system of substitutes for those functions that are necessary to the stability and survival of human societies. The functions of war. The visible military function of war requires no elucidation. It is not only obvious but also irrelevant to a transition to the condition of peace, in which it will by definition be superfluous. It is also subsidiary in social significance to the implied non-military functions of war. Those critical to transition can be summarized in 5 principal groupings. Number 1, economic. War has provided both ancient and modern societies with a dependable system for stabilizing and controlling national economies. No alternate method of control has yet been tested in a complex modern economy that has shown itself remotely comparable in scope or effectiveness. 2, political. The permanent possibility of war is the foundation for stable government. It supplies the basis for general acceptance of political authority. It has enabled societies to maintain necessary class distinctions, and it has ensured the subordination of the citizen to the state by virtue of the residual war powers inherent in the concept of nationhood. No modern political ruling group has successfully controlled its constituency after failing to sustain the continuing credibility of an external threat of war. Sociological, that's number 3. War, through the medium of military institutions, has uniquely served societies through the course of known history as an indispensable controller of dangerous social dissidents and destructive anti-social tendencies, as the most formidable of threats to life itself, and as the only one susceptible to mitigation by social organization alone. It has played another equally fundamental role. The war system has provided the machinery through which the motivational forces governing human behavior have been translated into binding social allegiance. It has thus ensured the degree of social cohesion necessary to the viability of nations. No other institution or groups of institutions in modern societies has successfully served these functions. Number 4, ecological. War has been the principal evolutionary device for maintaining a satisfactory ecological balance between gross human population and supplies available for its survival. It is unique to the human species. 5. Cultural and scientific. War orientation has determined the basic standards of value in the creative arts and has provided the fundamental motivational source of scientific and technological progress. The concepts that the arts express values independent of their own forms and that the successful pursuit of knowledge has intrinsic social value has long been accepted in modern societies. The development of the arts and sciences during this period has been corollary to the parallel development of weaponry. Substitutes for the functions of war. Criteria. The foregoing functions of war are essential to the survival of the social systems we know today. With 2 possible exceptions, they are also essential to any kind of stable social organization that might survive in a warless world. Discussion of the ways and means of transition to a world are meaningless unless A. Substitute institutions can be devised to fill these functions, or B. It can reasonably be hypothecated that the loss or partial loss of any one function need not destroy the viability of future societies. Such substitute institutions and hypotheses must meet varying criteria. In general, they must be technically feasible, politically acceptable, and potentially credible to the members of the societies that adopt them. Specifically, they must be characterized as follows. 1. Economic. An acceptable economic surrogate for the war system will require the expenditure of resources for completely non-productive purposes at a level comparable to that of the military expenditures otherwise demanded by the size and complexity of each society. Such a substitute system of apparent waste must be of a nature that will permit it to remain independent of the normal supply-demand economy. It must be subject to arbitrary political control. Number 2, political. A viable political substitute for war must posit a generalized external menace to each society of a nature and degree sufficient to require the organization and acceptance of political authority. Number 3, sociological. First, in the permanent absence of war, new institutions must be developed that will effectively control the socially destructive segments of societies. Second, for purposes of adapting the physical and psychological dynamics of human behavior to the needs of social organization, a credible substitute for war must generate an omnipresent and readily understood fear of personal destruction. This fear must be of a nature and degree sufficient to ensure adherence to societal values to the full extent that they are acknowledged to transcend the value of individual human life. And we will pick up with this is what, part 7? Part 7, it'll be section 7, summaries and conclusions. We'll pick up part 2 in the next video. We're almost getting there.